Would you like to get updated with the latest episode of AnimeKouhai Tensura spoiler series? It's episode number 407, Volume 15, Chapter 5, Part 7, entitled, Carrera Makes a Commitment to Fulfill Kondu's Dying Wish. Support the channel and you will have access to 3 episodes per week. Check out her Patreon page if you get a chance.
The Empire had already gained control of this floor by the looks of things, and they could see soldiers at every corner. All the signs of fierce combat strewn about suggested that this was another hairy floor to tackle. One of the unit captains tried to make contact with the people on the field.
What's the situation?
He asked the guard sentry, trying to keep quiet enough not to wake the resting soldiers.
It's a mess. We really underestimated this demon lord.
What do you mean?
The traps on this floor are awful. The path you see us guarding every corner of is the correct way, don't even try to venture outside of it. I think we've destroyed most of the traps, but there might still be some activated ones out there.
Alright, by the way.
The captain asked for details he could report to his superior officers. The story he was told involved a large number of chemical weapons, the likes of which not even the Empire made use of. There was a tasteless, odorless gas that damaged the eyes and throat, showers of neurotoxins and corrosive liquids, large, vicious traps that ensnared lots of people at once. The soldiers all thought this sort of thing was the exclusive domain of Empire, and that made it seem all the more threatening.
From this floor on, you won't find any monsters. Instead, there are these damned magical-powered golems roaming around. It looks like they're self-repairing, too. It took forever to fully dismantle them.
That sounds real tough.
The captain wanted to talk about how tough he had it, too, but kept silent, urging the sentry to go on.
Yeah. The injured and exhausted are resting down on floor 55. Make it there, and you'll be able to eat in safety, at least.
Thanks. So where's the front line at the moment?
The front line? According to a story I just heard, it's on floor 60. It sounded like a joke to me, though. If we reported it up top, they're gonna think we lost our minds down here. It's crazy, but do you still want to hear it?
The captain had to nod at the sighing soldier.
Yes, please.
You're sure? Well, okay, then. Supposedly, on floor 60, there's this giant humanoid weapon ruling over the place. And as for its strength...
The more he heard, the sillier it sounded. That was how sublimely grand it was. Even an entire army of A-ranked warriors, apparently, couldn't find a glimmer of hope against the guy. Its entire body was made of magisteel, making it impervious to swords and guns, and it had a permanent barrier as well, so not even magizookas worked on it. They had exhausted all options, and that was the latest the guard knew of.
Also, apparently this giant golem talks, and get this, it sounds exactly like old Lord Gadra. It's totally unbelievable, and I'm supposed to report this? This is way above my pay grade.
Despite the guard's valid complaints, the captain still felt obliged to report to his commanding officers and ask for their judgment.
We'll have to go in. I'll have us aim for floor 55 first. We'll discuss our future plans there.
Yes, sir.
In a situation like this, the captain knew that his boss's reply was going to be yes and nothing else. He had no alternative ideas, nor any other concerns with the plan. But this was kicking the can down the alleyway. They'd need a solid answer before long, but the word retreat simply didn't exist in the Imperial dictionary.
You're going? Yeah, I'm sure you are. Well, good luck, but before you go, I forgot about one other warning. We've confirmed the presence of 5 special monsters in the area. Keep an eye out for them.
Special monsters?
Yeah. Nobody's successfully beaten them yet, as far as I know. They've got to be uniques, I'm sure of that, and they're nasty. They've killed several of my comrades already.
They were a red slime, a golden skeleton, a deathly ghost, a heavy suit of living armor, and a small but powerful dragon. This vicious band was apparently patrolling the halls around this set of floors, a highly unusual presence among the herd of golems. Encounter them, the guard warned, and you were as good as dead. The survivors from the upper floors took that advice to heart as they moved on. It would be just a bit longer before they knew what was waiting for them. Deeper and deeper they went, incessantly and in strict formation, not knowing of the killing fields awaiting them. Labyrinth floors 61 to 70.
What? You still haven't won yet?
I'm sorry, sir. Looks like we failed to achieve a breakthrough again.
Hearing that report threw all the soldiers into despair. Floor 70 was home to a massive gate, a sort of boundary between this one and the great citadel of death. Pushing their way through the swarms of undead monsters, the Imperial soldiers swaggered across the labyrinth. It was going well at first anyway. All the monsters that appeared were of the undead variety. get used to the stench of rotting meat, and it wasn't anything an Imperial soldier would have much trouble fending off. The first 1,000 troops sent here managed to establish a base of operations, and after meeting with others, they decided to continue the invasion downward. Losing contact with the surface was a painful blow, but they weren't completely isolated. More would arrive when the time came, they decided, and so it was not a major problem. So like a raging torrent, the troops stormed down the floors. On day 1 alone, they had explored and mapped out most of the terrain between floors 61 and 69. Floor 70 was the problem. For some reason, this floor was a large, hilly area, one where all the vegetation had withered away. It was the eerie remains of a battlefield, with a hint of death in the air, and at the far end of it loomed a massive gate, similar in size to the one up on the surface. Made of bones, it was located in the middle of a wall that surrounded a fortified city. Why was this in a labyrinth? That was the question on everyone's mind. Apart from this gate, there was no other entrance into the city. There were no drainage pipes, no service gates, none of the other facilities you'd expect to be required for regular life. It made sense. This city was occupied by the lifeless, the immortal undead, and on day 1, its gates remained firmly shut. They tried to destroy the walls, but they proved tenaciously thick. Any section they destroyed, the undead would come swooping out to repair it, so the demolition work proceeded slowly, if at all. Even coming close to the wall exposed them to the armed skeleton archers up top. It was too much trouble to attack in small numbers, so the Empire forces decided to wait for reinforcements. On the morning of day 2, the Imperials now had over 10,000 troops on hand, and just as they were about to begin their attack, the large gates opened soundlessly out of nowhere. Behind it awaited a hideous-looking white king. It was a skeleton, but was that the right word? Its pure white bones, polished to perfection, shone in the light as it spoke fluently to the soldiers.
Welcome to my kingdom Deathtopia. I am Adalman, the immortal king. Our preparations for the feast are complete. Now, it is time to enjoy ourselves. Let us begin.
Immediately after Adalman introduced himself, an oppressive wave rushed over the army. This king was served by a band of unholy death knights, along with a death dragon that still loomed in all its majesty, long after life had escaped its clutches. Its evil roar was unleashed with enough sheer force to flatten the entire space, and then, from the sky, the death dragon landed just past the gate. The deadliest of dragons, the king of the mountain when it came to undead, had now bared its fangs at the Imperial army. And that wasn't all. Once the large gates fully opened, the legions of undead swarmed out from inside. Massive armies of death knights, themselves led by a set of death lords, came crawling out one after another. The soldiers lined up in front of the gate were immediately thrown into confusion as the battle suddenly began. This death dragon was an A-ranked monster, a fearsome adversary that required careful advance preparation to take a whack at. Its attribute was undead, meaning that it could not be defeated unless its soul was directly attacked, and as proud as the Empire was of its great war power, if their foe was impervious to their attacks, they were helpless.
Get back! We can't just go slashing at random!
We have to fight fire with fire here.
No, he regenerates faster than he burns.
You have to get out of here! If you don't, its miasma will hit you and rip your spirit apart!
The army was in chaos, and as if to laugh at them, the dragon's jaw opened wide.
Look out! Hey!
It's my body. It's rotting.
The death dragon's zombie breath rained down from high above, bathing all its earthbound targets. The majority of them failed the resistance check and promptly stopped living. And that wasn't all, for those contaminated by the dragon's miasma became zombies themselves, readily obeying the orders of their superior beings. In this case, the superior being would be the White King in the area, in other words, Adalman. All the casualties the Empire took from the miasma were inversely proportional to the rise in Adalman's strength. And that wasn't the only tragedy for the Imperial force. Even those who managed to escape the Death Dragon's rampage weren't safe, for now the Death Knights spurred on their death horses as they chased down the would-be escapees. In the blink of an eye, the Empire's numbers were decimated, and in less than an hour, the force of 10,000 was wiped out. The devastation would be passed on to the rest of the army by the few people who survived, and now the battle for Floor 70 was in full swing. From day 2 onward, the Imperial army made many attempts to break into Floor 70. The first one ended in painful defeat, the second and third saw similar results. Nothing was going their way, and the overwhelming threat of the Death Dragon was just the start of it. Although their numbers were only in the low thousands, the Death Knights experienced no death, no fatigue, no exhaustion. They earned an A- rank as a threat, and their regenerative skills kept them going no matter how many times they were beaten down. The Death Lords commanding them must have been on par with the best warriors the Empire could offer. They surpassed them in quality, even, and their army's ability to carry on fighting through untold damage far overcame their numerical disadvantage. On top of that, Adalman had the Death Paladin Alberto working under him as part of the 10 dungeon marvels. Even the Imperial elites on the ground here couldn't find a way to fight against this army of immortals.
But that will end with this offensive. I expect great things from you all.
A colonel with the Imperial army had just wrapped up his speech to his soldiers. He was part of a group from the upper floors who arrived here on day 4. They, along with the combined existing forces, were about to wage total war. The Empire wasn't incompetent, of course. There were all kinds of ways to deal with an undead enemy. If you had a marauding army of zombies out to kill humankind, holy magic was an all-purpose go-to. Humankind had committed sizable resources to researching and demystifying the principles of this holy magic, and the Empire had succeeded in developing techniques that had a similar effect as offering prayers to a higher being. People well versed in these techniques had been gathered from across the labyrinth and assigned to the units here on floor 70. They'd provide resistance to the dragon's evil miasma and penetrative power against the undead attribute. That was the crux of this operation. The Imperial army was now in formation atop the hilly terrain, numbering 70,000 in all. Adalman's forces, meanwhile, numbered less than 40,000, and even that was accounting for all the zombie reinforcements he'd won for himself over the past few days. The Empire had a clear numerical advantage, and now every member of their force believed that victory would be theirs at long last. Then the decisive battle began, and the king made his move.
Think you've outsmarted me? Think again. Extra skill. Holy evil inversion.
The immortal king had perfect control over all his forces, down to the end of the line. Once his power reached across his entire network, their weakness to the holy attribute was no longer an issue. The Empire, wholeheartedly relying on that weakness, would soon realize just how off-target their scheme was, and how massive their ensuing defeat would be. With that defeat, the Imperial soldiers' wills were broken. The survivors were driven to despair, frantically fleeing toward the upper floors. They completely forgot about the conditions for beating the dungeon. The only thing left in their minds was the thirst for life, the urge to survive. Labyrinth floors 71 to 79. The soldiers dropped off at these floors were instantly forced into a never-ending battle against swarms of insects. The onslaught was incessant. Unafraid of death, they continually attacked, not letting up for a moment. For the troops sent here on day 1 of the Labyrinth invasion, the first 24 hours against these swarms were a sobering experience but not a truly fearsome one. Building their base in a passageway they gained control of, they immediately stepped up to take countermeasures.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the new members of AnimeKouhai supporters: Mathis Dangle, Gloomy, Nick H, Jason Torres, Kirisoto Sama, Sesh, Mika Pekarinen, Launch Specialist 8, Zahakob Aid, Sam. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.